Vladimir Zelensky once again reiterated calls for a clear date to join the EU. I don't think he said next year precisely, but once again, he wants something set in stone. Is this realistic?
It's really not realistic. And actually, every time he makes these statements, he gets a lot of backlash here in Brussels. People are growing kind of impatient with this because it's been made clear to him that there is no such thing as fast track membership, and that date he was giving of 2027 just last month is ludicrous, really, is what people keep saying here. So he did leave the date out, at least when he again reiterated this call, and he has support from people, from the majority of people here in Brussels, in EU capitals. There is majority support for Ukraine in theory being in the EU someday. But then when you get to the specifics about the date, about the logistics in terms of the difficulty this would present to European agriculture as a whole, to whether a real federation of Europe is possible with Ukraine as a member, because it's so big and so far away, would take the Union to an enormous size. These are specifics that people don't really want to talk about, because once you start pulling on the thread, you see that Ukrainian membership of the European Union, even though people in theory are in favor of it, is just extremely, extremely complicated, and it is anything but a done deal. I think a lot of people I talk to privately here in Brussels say that most likely Ukraine will not be a full member of the European Union, even at any point in time, that there has to be some other kind of accommodation made for a wider area of the EU. We know we're going in this two-speed Europe direction at the moment. So I don't think that will have helped him that he brought that up again. But again, at least he didn't give an unrealistic end date. Overall, though, his speech was well received in the European Parliament. He's always well received there. There is obviously a lot of sympathy for Ukraine, this being the fourth year of the war. They're entering their fifth year of war. There is still a lot of ideological support from the EU at this time, but when it comes to material support, that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where we've been having difficulties, because Viktor Orban is now vetoing this 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine, and so the EU president showed up in Kyiv today empty-handed, without that money that they were supposed to be able to give to Ukraine in order to make up for the US pulling its support for the war.
Let's talk about the United States, because we know that there have been US-led efforts to bring this war to an end. Donald Trump has spoken multiple times with Vladimir Putin and has tried to get these two sides to the table. Europe, meanwhile, has been struggling to get its voice heard in those negotiations. When it comes to dealing directly with the Russians, does Europe have any channels open, and is there any hope going down the line?
Europe has no channels open with the Russians right now, and you're hearing increasing criticism of that. Since the start of the war, the EU and Europe, the European member states' policy has been not to talk to Russia. So the only European leaders that have gone to talk to Russia are those sympathetic with Putin, such as Hungary's Viktor Orban. Now, it has been really verboten to suggest that the EU should talk directly to Russia over the past 4 years. But I will say I've seen a shift over the past 2 months, that you're getting more center, mainstream politicians suggesting that, you know what, maybe we do need to talk to Russia. After all, the US is directly talking to Russia. And as you say, the EU is really cut out of those peace negotiations between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. The EU is basically not involved at all in those, even though they sometimes want to pretend otherwise. There is a general feeling in Brussels right now that those talks have really reached the limit here, that they're not going anywhere. And so the EU needs to step in and change that dynamic by getting involved. And one way to get involved would be to talk directly to Russia. But the EU's High Representative for Foreign Policy still says she is opposed to talking directly to Russia.
Okay, so we're back to square one then. Thank you very much for that, Dave. Dave Keating reporting there for us from Brussels.